Welcome to Choose Views with Richard Chew. Get ready to dive into a world of insightful conversations and thought-provoking discussions.
As progressives, our job is to have an all-inclusive, full-on assault with all of our players.
A show that will focus on moving our political, social, economic, gender, and cultural conversation forward.
And all of our players means all of our players.
It's Choose Views. And now, here's your host, Richard Chew.
Good Thursday morning, progressives, and welcome to the January 23rd, 2025 edition of Choose Views. 773-763-9278. Facebook Live and TuneIn Radio will say, yeah, come and get us. YouTube, Twitter Stream, and iHeartRadio. You can email me, of course, at richard@WCPT820.com. It's always great to get your emails. And, of course, you can text us as well as call in to the 773-763-9278 number. Catch all of our shows by subscribing to our WCPT podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And there you can get the short version and the long version of Choose Views. Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, driving it home with Patty Vasquez, who's back today, and the big picture with Edwin Eisendrath, as well as Out Chicago and our other great shows on the weekend. Check us out at our heartlandsignal.com platform, digital stuff. Pass it on. Busy day today. Let me give you guys the quick rundown. Busy day and long day for Mr. Chew here. So we have State Rep Will Guzzardi that'll be with us, Potawatomi Nation Chair Joseph Rupnick, and LaTanya Woodson, who's the Executive Director and Health Director at the Edgewater Center and in Northwest Indiana. So that's where we're going to be today, starting at 6:30, 6:37, 7:30. So we'll be pretty busy talking with some local folks about local issues that happen to have impact on our national conversation. And then this evening, I will be on Sirius XM with John Fugelsang at 10 p.m. Central Time, and looking forward to that time with John today. So, busy day, long day, but hey, we are excited to be able to talk with you guys and talk about the things that are important. And so in that space, I want to, tomorrow, just to let you know, of course, we have our wonderful friend Karen Byrne from True Blue Politics podcast that'll be with us. And then we will have Mayor Brandon Johnson from the city of Chicago will be with us as well. So speaking of Mayor Johnson, I gotta give this quick shout out. If I guess you could call it a shout out, thumbs up, whatever. I'm going to play it tomorrow, not today, but in case you guys didn't see it, but, with the conversation around immigration and around who's here, who's been here from a cultural standpoint, Mayor Johnson was a little spicy yesterday in an interview, and I'm going to tease him a little bit about it because he wanted to curse, but he used he adroitly manipulated some words to say what he wanted to say, but he was definitely spicy. So I'm going to have a little fun with the mayor, but in the good sense of protecting the people of the city of Chicago. That's the basis that he was coming from, as well as the state of Illinois and really the rest of the country. So I'm going to talk about that with Mayor Johnson tomorrow, among other things. Later today, of course, live, local, and progressive, Joan Esposito will be talking to Capitol Fools writer Mark Eden ahead of the three Capitol Fools shows at the North Shore Center for the Performing Arts in Skokie on February 1st and 2nd. She'll also be giving away a pair of tickets for the show, so you want to tune into that. Then Joan will be joined by Julie Kay, human rights lawyer and co-author of Controlling Women, What We Must Do Now to Save Reproductive Freedom. And by the way, guys, that impacts men as well. Also, Joan Walsh, National Affairs Correspondent for The Nation magazine and co-author of Corporate BS, Exposing the Lies and the Half-Truths That Protect Profit, Power, and Wealth in America. Live, local, and progressive weekdays 2 to 5, Joan Esposito on WCPT. And then, as I said, tonight, 5 to 7 p.m., Patty Vasquez is back, and she'll be talking to Jeff Baidu, licensed CPA and founder of and CEO of Baidu Enterprises, and Dan Schaefer of the Recomulation area with the latest political news from Wisconsin. Driving it home with Patty Vasquez, weeknights, 5 to 7 here on WCPT. And yes, that's Central Time. So make sure you make your way over to the new podcast, Choose Views full episodes and Choose Views featured interviews. You can subscribe to both or just one, whichever you prefer. And the podcasts are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Amazon, and TuneIn. And just search Choose Views with Richard Chu. And get the links also by visiting heartlandsignal.com/choose-views. Check it out, guys. All right. Running at top speed today because we are busy. And we've got lots to cover and 3 guests to talk with today. What a great week. I want to kind of give a quick rewind. Let's do this first. Let's hit some Choose Views news because there's a couple of key ones here, and then we'll come back to some things that have happened this week that I want to talk with you about with regard to our guest. So here we go, guys. Momentum grows on the RTO push, while 2024 saw a steady stream of return to office orders from major companies. 2025 has already turned up the volume substantially. And I said this when I saw this last year, that President Trump's executive order to talk about that with regard to Project 2025 would be part of the fuel that other companies would say, well, we probably should be doing it too. So I hate being right about it, but I was kind of right about that. His order of hauling federal employees back to the office was followed by a Bloomberg report that Major League Baseball is readying its own RTO mandate. Baseball, y'all. Now, you can't play baseball from home. I get that. But in terms of, I could see this coming. And why did RTO, why did work from home become bigger? Because he dropped the ball with COVID, which forced a lot. Okay. America, y'all dropped the ball. You really fumbled. You didn't just fumble it. You coughed it up in a major way. The move tightens pandemic-era flexible work arrangements. Then they reflect a broader shift of power from workers to employers, per the New York Times, or per me, because I said this was coming. Hate to be right about certain things, but got to pay attention, y'all. JetBlue to take Venmo for airfare. Passengers can now use Venmo to pay for their flights on JetBlue, marking a first for the airline industry, according to the carrier. The move comes as the airline looks to boost services and generate new revenue amid tough competition from larger airlines. More consumers are also turning to digital platforms like Venmo for everyday transactions. JetBlue has been struggling with losses since the pandemic, reporting a $260 million loss in 2022 and additional losses in 2023 and 2024. New York Times eyes bundling as it's a way to grow, and so they've been struggling in some areas. So bundling isn't just for streamers. The New York Times is looking into partnering with smaller publishers to beef up its subscriber base, according to Axios, citing anonymous sources that it's inked pacts with several European papers and reportedly made a failed games content pitch to Ankler. It's now wooing U.S. publishers with a lifestyle bundle that includes cooking, games, and sports. It's on a mission to grow readership from 11 million to 15 million subscribers by 2027. Netflix is flexing its pricing power after seeing a record quarterly surge in subscribers. Its monthly ad-based plan will hit $7.99 with premium subscriptions at $24.99. The increase comes as Netflix ups its annual content spend to $18 billion. It remains cheaper on a per-hour basis than its rivals. However, says UBS, with advertising revenue barely making a dent and surging demand boosted by live sports programming, it may well retain its pricing power. So there you go. This winter storm, Henry, is breaking power records. The demand for power has hit a record high at the largest electric grid in the U.S. following a major winter storm in the country's eastern half. PJM Interconnection reported consumption peaked at 140 gigawatts, surpassing the 2015 winter record. And we're not even through winter yet. Meanwhile, the South is recovering from one of the worst snowstorms in 130 years, with heavy snowfalls from Houston to Pensacola. Power outages, flight cancellations, transportation disruptions. But, of course, temperatures are expected to rise this weekend in those areas. So then they're going to have to deal with what? The runoff of the water, because they're also not equipped for that. You know, you can say what you want to, guys, but climate change is there's an epicenter of things or stuff that happens scientifically that are impacting these weather patterns. I'm sorry, that are in fact impacting what type of weather we get, and that's climate change, climate adjustment, whatever word you want to use if you have your head buried in the sand saying that it doesn't happen. But the reality is, now we've, shift a little bit to Los Angeles. Residents who lost their homes in the fires are recovering insurance payouts. It's being determined that that's not going to be that easy for them because in many cases the properties were underinsured and overvalued just by virtue of where they are. The scale of devastation has pushed the industry to its breaking point, complicating an already lengthy process that frequently results in smaller than expected payouts. Those homes who survive the fires face another dilemma, whether they can afford the cost of pricier insurance premiums. Got to pay attention to our climate, y'all. We just do. Like Vangelis talked about on Monday, this is not something we can play around with. So, all right, guys, couple of Choose Views news for you this morning. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about something that's happened as a result of guests that we've had this week on the show. The number is 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views, and we will be right back.
You're listening to Choose Views with Richard Chu on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey, guys, welcome back to Choose Views, 773-763-9278. So let's talk about this for a second. We've been fortunate with this show and, of course, on the station in general to really have some great folks on our various shows. And whether it's here or it's Jones' show or it's Patty's show, and I'm talking about in terms of our local broadcast. Obviously, with Tom and with Stephanie, slightly different format, and then of course our weekend people that we have on all of our shows out Chicago, Edwin, Eisendrath, Family Meeting, and others. We've been fortunate to have really great people come through. And one of the things that I'm proud of, and I'm sharing this with you guys because I'm proud of what happened, and that's in the space of doing local and talking local. And tonight, when I'm on John Fugelsang's show on Sirius XM, he and I are going to talk about this a little bit deeper. But the impact of local, and particularly given that we're here in Chicago, in the metropolitan area, the region, and the broader state of Illinois, what we do here does matter throughout the rest of the country. It does impact people in other parts of the country. And I know that, and I feel a certain responsibility to make sure that we're doing everything we can, and I am with my show, our show, to broaden the local conversation. And every now and again, Henry, you do something and there's an immediate impact and there's an immediate touch from the things that we do. And so keeping this as private as I can on a public format. We had yesterday the folks on from Blessings in a Backpack, specifically Dan Summons, who's the managing director here in Chicago. And wow. What happened was, later yesterday morning after the show, and him being a guest on with the assistant principal, they got a call, and that call was from a person who was listening to the show. Name we'll keep private. That's not the point. And lo and behold, guys, that person listening to the show made a contribution to Blessings in a Backpack. I mean, how cool is that, Henry? How absolutely cool is that? So you can't tell me that local doesn't matter. That's when we talk about the phrase of things like, catchphrases like, where the rubber meets the road and this, that, and the other. That's what we're talking about. And so is that going to change what Donald Trump does? Not directly, but the person that made the contribution, blessings to her. Said it was okay. Blessings to her. It was a woman, and to her family, and to all that she cares about. First and foremost, you know who you are. I'm not going to mention your name, but blessings to you for that. One, two. I'm excited for Blessings in a Backpack, and kudos to Dan for the hard work he does. Three. that just goes to show you that local activities will have an impact on a bigger group. And I remember I said yesterday, if you're looking for a way to get out of your own shell and a way to, not be caught up in your own thinking and your silo, do something for somebody external to you and watch what happens. So that's so cool that this listener made a contribution to the organization and that we got to be part of that in an indirect way or a direct way. But for me, the bigger conversation is that we get to take that and say, see what happens when we talk about local things. Because Blessings in a Backpack is, as Dan said, there's not a zip code in America that there isn't some food shortage or, for more specifically, children that are impacted by, lack of food, which is sad as hell. But that being said, they're an organization that has influence throughout the country. And that's where we get to have impact and make sure that we're doing our part. And I'm really proud that we're a part of that. And in a bigger sense, as it relates to what you can be doing to help and get yourself out of whatever you might feel you're stuck in, this is what we're talking about. Get involved with the local organization and then look at how their impact nationally can be felt. So kudos to Blessings in a Backpack. Kudos to Dan Summons for the work that he's doing here in Chicago as a managing director. And kudos to the individual that found it the thing to do in terms of contributing. So I'm excited about that, and I wanted to talk about that and remind you guys that local is important because from our standpoint here in Chicago, local is regional and it's national. And for somebody that's in a different part of the country, this is where I say, find the local organization. Find a local organization and or find a group that you may have heard of or heard about on our show that has some local ties to your community that you're in. And you might be surprised at what impact you can have. And then what that does, I believe, is it empowers you to say, okay, I'm doing something outside of me that's going to benefit another person. And then in the bigger scheme of this, as it relates to politics, as it relates to how we're trying to reset and make sure we take back our country, start taking back some local stuff. Start taking back those seats on the school board. Start taking back some of those local offices and those statewide offices. Let's start there by starting with groups like Blessings. So I just wanted to share that with you guys so that you can see direct impact. It's right there. And that's so cool. All right. I just wanted you guys to be aware, be mindful, let your voice be heard. The power of your voice is strong. And we played that clip earlier in the week. We'll probably hit you guys with that again tomorrow. Because as I was saying about Mayor Johnson, he got a little spicy and he used his voice as he should. And he used his platform as he should continue to do that. So I'm hoping to talk with him about that tomorrow. Take back our country. We must reject Trump's double standard as a starting point in terms of double standard. Trump could give a damn about kids that are going hungry on the weekend. So Blessings is a group that's standing in the void, irrespective of who's sitting in the White House, the governor's mansion, or any mayor's office or state legislator's office. And so many other groups that we're going to be talking with. That's why I said reach out to the Sierra Club, reach out to DeMario Cooper at the Center for Popular Democracy. Reach out to Kate Lincoln Goldfinch because they need to know that you're there. They should be able to operate, like I've said many times, and I'll say it again, and not have to turn around and wonder if anybody's got their back. Okay? But to take back our country, we must reject the Trump double standard. If we're going to take back our government on all levels, from billionaires and uber wealthy businesses that are leaning in to get their bit of the action, then we must reject any special treatment that they're getting. We have to call them on the carpet about it. How do we call a public company on the carpet? They have shareholder meetings. I mean, if you are a person that has investments in particular companies, but you're a progressive liberal Democrat and don't like what's happening, then maybe it's time to show up at a shareholder meeting. Maybe it's time to find out the heads of that part of the external communication from the company and let him or her know you are not happy with that organization's involvement with the Trump administration. For what purpose? Nothing that's going to benefit the greater society. I mean, prove it to me. Someone prove that to me. And let's see if you've got the guts to call this show and prove to me that a company spending money with Trump is going to benefit the people downstream with that company. It's going to benefit the relationship of the C-suite people with the administration. Prove to me that it's going to benefit someone that's making $75,000 a year and busting their hump, maybe having to work a second job, how them taking away goods and taking away services in that community that person lives in is going to, by the government, federal government, Trump's administration doing that, how in the heck that's going to actually benefit that person that you rolled into Washington or to Mar-a-Lago and bent the knee to Donald Trump. That was to protect your brand, meaning you as a C-suite person. That was to protect your access to this administration, period, to get special treatment. But is that special treatment going to make its way downstream? If it will, I'd like somebody to call and walk me through it. Because I've done the math and I've done the strategic analysis of it, and it doesn't hold up. It's Reagan all over again. Trickle down. It never happened. We got it on. We got number one on, not number two. In some cases, people got number two on. I saw a really interesting meme on social media yesterday that was indicative of what Trump has done before, did it during the time he was out of office, and is going to do it again. And there was someone drew this thing, Henry, where they took the lid of the Capitol building off, and Donald Trump was using it as a toilet. That's what Donald Trump has done. So the CEOs that are rolling into Washington and to Mar-a-Lago to kiss the ring, it's time for the game to be over for this clown. This fascist clown, acting like a fascist clown. One of the things that I'm going to really do my best job at is not singularly labeling unless someone does something that deserves a singular label, but speaking to their actions. Okay? Acting like a fascist. The nation that was supposed to be founded on equality, the country, the country has never really treated everybody equally, based on this creed that, all men are created equal. You have to think about it from this perspective. Right now, there were a bunch of rich white men, that were sitting on the dais, that were sitting closest to Trump, both at the inauguration and at the service, the church service, that were the ones that got to be close to the largesse, got to be close to the happenings, but yet they care. See, this is where people who were stupid enough to vote for this carnage, this craziness. Someone asked me this question yesterday. Are they that stupid? And I say, I think it's a lot of willful ignorance, as I've said before, because you saw the people who were sitting around. You didn't see any regular folks. I mean, we're all regular folks, but you didn't see anybody that, if they were really down with the folks that voted to help get them there, then they should have been smart enough to say, but that just goes to show that's not their game plan. They would have had some regular folks sitting there to represent the people that they so-called care about. And y'all got bamboozled willfully and with the arrogant ignorance that comes with that. So it's the truth. But we can take it back, y'all. We can take it back by starting with local efforts to make sure that people on a local level who are going to be impacted by some of this craziness are protected. And Blessings in a Backpack is doing that. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking with one of our state representatives, Will Gazzardi, who I'm looking forward to chatting with. 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views, and we'll be right back.
Welcome back to Choose Views with Richard Chu on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey guys, welcome back to Choose Views. 773-763-9278. Glad to be with you this morning. Well, listen, as we said before, at the end of last year and beginning of this year, that local here in Illinois, here in the city of Chicago, was going to be a big part of our platform in 2025 because local impacts local in other markets and other states, I should say, as well as other markets. But with us this morning, we have the opportunity to be chatting with one of our own state representatives, Will Guzzardi of the 39th District here in Illinois. Good morning, Will, and welcome to Choose Views. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. Are you the one that went out and turned the temperature up a little bit by 10 degrees?
I thought I could warm it up for us. Yeah, it seems a little chilly out there.
Man, well, listen, we talk about it and we all comment on it. But those of us who've been around for a while here in Chicago know that that's what we're going to get at some point. We're going to have those, 4, 6, 10 days where it's just like, oh my gosh. Mm-hmm. But a 10-degree change is like monumental. It's crazy.
I'm serious. It feels like wearing shorts out there at 25 degrees.
Coats are wide open, left the gloves on this front seat of the car and all that good stuff. Well, listen, Representative, thanks for being with us this morning. One of the things that I've been talking about, and obviously, our show is local here in Chicago, based here in Chicago, but we have a national audience on all of our shows that are part of WCPT. One of the things that I've been talking about is the impact and the importance of local issues and how those local issues impact things that happen on a statewide, regional, and national basis. And in some cases, has some international impact. And you've really taken the lead recently on an issue that's a big bill, but not just here in Illinois, but it has a potential domino effect throughout the rest of the country. Talk a little bit about that with us this morning.
Yeah. As a state legislator, we work on a lot of issues and subjects, and the one that I wanted to talk with you about this morning has to do with decriminalizing adult consensual sex work. Now, this is a topic that people may not have thought a lot about and may have some preconceived notions about, but I think it's a really important one for us to dig into because, Illinois has for a long time been a leader in legislating bodily autonomy, that consenting adults can do what they want with their bodies without government interference. That's a premise that we hold really firm, and it's going to be one that's very important to reaffirm for us, in the coming years. Unfortunately, in this country right now, people who engage in sex work are some of the most vulnerable individuals in our society and face epidemic levels of violence. It's hard to get really good statistics on this population, but they say that anywhere from 50 to 75% of sex workers face violence and abuse during the course of their careers. The murder rate for sex workers is between 10 and 20 times higher, 10 to 20 times higher than that of the rest of the population. And it's because their work is forced into the shadows, that they're not able to vet clients, to meet clients in safe places, that when clients are potentially violent, they don't want to reach out to law enforcement because they're worried about the consequences for them, because sex workers are predominantly low income, predominantly people of color, much more overrepresented by the LGBTQ population. So they're afraid to call the cops because of the legal consequences for them. So when a client threatens them, they just, too often are unable to find safety and protection. So what the community of sex workers here in Chicago and around the country has said is that the thing that will keep them safe is decriminalizing adult consensual sex work. Trafficking is still wrong and unacceptable and should be illegal. Coercion, but an adult who willingly says, the choice that I'm going to make of how I'm going to make my money in this world is by, exchanging sex for money, and they're doing that with other consenting adults. Government has no business getting in between that decision.
Well, first of all, thanks for leaning into that and giving us a little bit more spotlight on the conversation. Because one of the things that we as a community of people, and I say a community of people, and I mean that broadly, nationally, universally, is that when we put our heads in the sand on certain things, nothing gets done with it. Nothing gets addressed. Right. People don't talk about it. And you've been sorry, Representative Guzzardi, I apologize for that. You've been around for a little bit less time than I, but you've been around for a minute to know that when we put our heads in the sand on issues and we don't get something done, then they go in these weird directions. And the word that I wrote down when you were talking is the word stigma. And there is talk a little bit about this as it relates to the perception and then trying to have legislation to affect this. The stigma of just the word sex, causes everybody to kind of be like, I don't want to talk about that right now, until you get behind closed doors, and then people are talking about it like it's the next coming. So help us understand, in your experience with this legislation, how stigma is probably the thing that's creating the biggest hurdle.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is a perception of sex workers that we get through popular culture. And it's very dehumanizing. It comes to us through music, through movies, right? And it envisions sex workers as really people whose bodies are, expendable, and people who are. I think when we imagine someone who works in the sex trade, we think of someone who's, walking the streets, who's knocking on the car windows of people who are passing by, right? Like, these are the depictions that we get in movies. And the truth is that sex workers are everywhere. Clients of sex workers are everywhere. Some of them do work on the street. Most of them work, find their clients online, advertise in certain spaces. Many of them are entrepreneurs who are running a business, right? They meet in hotels, they meet in their homes, they meet in shared spaces, right? They do performance, they do online video. Sex work is this big category of stuff that's happening all the time, and we really like to pretend that it's somebody else, it's not us. It's like nobody I know would ever participate in that industry. But I promise you, to everybody who's listening to this show right now, you know somebody who has engaged in sex work as a client or as a seller. It's very, very prevalent in our society, and we turn a blind eye to it, and we pretend like the people who do it are, like you said, stigmatized, unimportant, trivialized. And when we do that, that's when those folks are just susceptible to so much violence and suffering, because we do turn a blind eye to them. We pretend they don't exist. We dehumanize them. We dehumanize their bodies. And then when violence happens to them, we feel like they deserve it, or they were asking for it because they're engaging in this work. Well, that's what happens when you sell sex, and we have to destigmatize sex and sex work in order to have an honest conversation about what our policy should be.
And I think that and thank you for addressing that. I think that particularly your last couple of sentences is in the greater conversation what we have to do on a lot of issues when it comes to everyday living. And I mean, one of the things that you've been, a great champion of is making sure that the workplace isn't all messed up and there's not discrimination in the workplace and people are being, I mean, this is why I say, Representative Guzzardi, that this is this specific issue and the specific bill with regard to decriminalizing sex work is, yes, it's part of a national conversation, but work in general. And you're leaning into advancing measures to end workplace discrimination. That's a national issue. Talk a little bit about that and how you see it, and what are some of your thoughts around trying to have people pull their heads out of the sand in that space?
Yeah, well, they're so related, right? Because I think when we get out of the sort of like Victorian stigma around sex stuff, when we look at this issue with clear eyes, we see that sex work is work. It's just another form of employment that's happening in our world. And when you think about it that way, it's really, this bill is really of a piece with my entire legislative career. I was the sponsor of the bill to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour in Illinois. I was the sponsor of legislation to end discrimination at small businesses, to provide additional discrimination protections for workers who have family responsibilities, people caring for elderly parents or sick children or spouses. All of these, I've worked on union rights. All of these issues, it's all the same story, which is that at work, Americans are being exploited by their bosses across industries and in so many different fields. And we're told just to accept it. We're told that that's just the way things are. But when workers come together to build power, they can demand better treatment. And when they work with leaders in government who are aligned with their views, we can pass laws to protect workers, to make sure that better treatment is enshrined in law. And that means better wages, that means better health care, that means less discrimination, less violence, less workplace injury, protections against those things. All of us face these kinds of challenges, and we have to speak them out loud, destigmatize them, and come together and demand better.
One of the things, and again, thank you for breaking that down, because again, it's one of those, it's a national issue. This is not just here in Chicago or the state of Illinois. This is a national concern, and we have to, and I applaud you for this, have more legislators that are willing to say, listen, if we don't take care, and I know people may listen to me, Representative, and say, here Richard goes again with his, big heart, bleeding heart, progressive liberal thought process. But it's really not that. I mean, if we don't slow down and take care of each other, then we're going to crash into the wall, and the wall is going to be able to withstand the crash more than we are. And when it comes to workplace discrimination, that's a big one. It's been there forever. And it's one that we haven't really resolved because we don't lean into it. And I want to get your thoughts on something that's coming about right now. And that's this RTO, the mandates that are taking place with the number of companies. And I'm wondering if you think there's going to be any kind of pushback from employees that for the last couple of years, going back to the beginning of COVID, were able to work from home, and now the mandate to come back. I mean, that's the employer has the right to do that. But do you see that there's going to be any, larger pushback from employees that have changed their lifestyle that now have to probably do that again in terms of coming back, being forced back to work, back to the office, I should say?
I think one thing that we saw during COVID, strangely enough, is workers flex their power in a real way. That, for instance, in low wage jobs, you saw the fast food chains posting openings at much higher wages than they had because they thought, no one wants to work. So we had to pay people $18 an hour. Well, that's a reflection of workers demanding better treatment on the job and saying, I refuse to take a job that pays me $9.50, right? And I think, that sort of slowly awakening, for lack of a less charged way of saying it, class consciousness among the working class, of saying, wait a second, the bosses have been manipulating us and pushing us around, and actually, if we just demand better, they have to give it to us. I think that has woken up a lot of people in this country, and you see the rise of unionization after decades of decline. All of a sudden, people across new sectors, even in some white-collar industries are starting to think, man, we should really form a union because that's how we get things better, right? So I think this return to office stuff really is going to be another instance where the workforce is going to be is going to have the opportunity to decide how to react to it, right? It's not just the bosses say it and then it happens. If people say, well, I'm not going to work at a company that forces me to go into the office if I don't want to. I think you might yet again see, not a coordinated effort or a national strike or anything like that, but just workers across the country choosing, opting out of that kind of work and demanding that their employers provide them these different opportunities. And I think that the big employers are going to have to respond to the demands of the workforce. We've seen that over and over again in the last several years.
I'm excited to hear that, and optimistically, I'm leaning in your direction in that space, because that just improvement, that collective energy just improves it for everybody, and that's not a bad thing. That's a very good thing. So some of the issues that I want to read to you guys that Representative Guzzardi is behind and really leans into. I just want you guys to hear this for a second. An economy for everyone, stable housing for everyone, health care for all, justice for all, great public education, true public safety, ending corporate greed, ending systemic racism and oppression, a budget for the future of Illinois, action for the future of the planet. Those are some lofty but very important. Lofty is not a negative word. Let me make sure that people understand. I'm not being negative. Those are some lofty, as we should have, goals that that you're standing behind, or issues, I should say, that you believe in. And as we kind of wrap up, I know that people want to. We've had a really interesting week. I just share this story with you if you didn't already hear. We had an organization leader on yesterday, local, right here in Chicago, Blessings in a Backpack, national organization, local managing director. Person listening to the show heard us talk about what this local group is doing. They called them up and made a donation. It doesn't get any more direct and real than that. And so for you, with the bill that you propose, and hopefully this legislation is going to be there to protect sex workers or those that are in the sex working business, gets through, what are some other things that you have with the laundry list of the things that are your issues? What are some of the things that you have on your dartboard that you're working toward as we go forward in 2025?
Yeah. One, you mentioned housing. I've been, the last 4 years, I've chaired the housing committee in the Illinois General Assembly, and affordable housing is a crisis for everybody, whether it's people who are living in a homeless shelter and trying to move out and need a place that they can afford with some help to find permanent shelter, or whether it's that family's trying to buy their first home, and who's been renting for a while, looking to buy and just can't find anywhere they can afford, or folks who've lived in their home for decades and all of a sudden their property taxes are through the roof and they're not sure that they can afford to stay. It is a challenge for everyone, and so I have my big goal in that area this year is to create new subsidies at the state level to support the construction of more affordable housing, because we just need more housing for everybody. There's not enough, and what there is just too expensive. So that's a really key priority for me in this coming legislative session.
Got it. That's it. Well, and that's something that it's like drinking water. We all need it. We all have to have it to survive. Yes. And at some point, I want to talk to you again about housing. And I've got this, people have said, Richard, you're crazy in this thought. But I've got this thing in my head, Representative, that is, we have a lot of vacant structures in the city of Chicago. See, I know we'll have you back and we'll talk about this, and maybe we'll do a pre-record. But I just look at that, and I'm driving around the city of Chicago, and I'm like, man, there's folks that are homeless or houseless or whatever the phrase is people want to use. How come we can't get them in there? What am I missing? And I'm going to tease you with that. And then maybe give it a couple of weeks, and then you and I will have an offline conversation, and then we'll do something and talk about this, because it's a big deal for me. Housing and people having a place to be is so important to me, and I'm so thankful that you're leading the charge in that space. Do us a favor. Let folks know how they can find you, how they can check up on you, how they can get involved with you as one of our state representatives. Sure.
You can just go to willguzzardi.com. It's GUZZARDI.com, My contact information is all there. You can shoot me an email, will@willgazzardi.com. I would love to hear from your listeners, and happy to be back on the program anytime.
Absolutely. Will Gazzardi, representative of the 39th District in Illinois. We are so proud to have you as one of our leaders, and we look forward to having you back on the show. Thank you so much for being with us this morning.
My pleasure.
Have a great day. We'll talk soon.
You too.
Bye now. Hot darn. Talk about somebody that's leaning into the areas that we need to be leaned into. That was Representative Will Gazzardi of the 39th District here in Illinois. He's a member of the House of Representatives. You need to check him out. He's taken on the issues that are important to everybody, irrespective of your community, your culture, your economics. These are things that they have to be important to all of us. And Henry, I know that you know this as a young cat, and you see, your future and looking at things that you want to be doing. And he talked about this in terms of housing. That's the thing that like water and air, that's a connective tissue for all of us. And so I do want to talk to him more about the amount of vacant structures that we have in this, not just in Chicago or Chicagoland area or the state of Illinois, but all over the country. I've got this crazy thing that we can fix our homeless and houseless problem. And again, I'm the first to say, maybe y'all think I'm crazy, but we have too many vacant structures to have so many people out on the street. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. And I'm going to continue to talk about this. It's something that it came out of nowhere that I was talking about this years ago with friends and family, Henry, and colleagues. And so now, I've got a little bit of a voice to talk about it on the show, but that's definitely something that we as a country have to tackle. We don't need to, and listen, I'm not stupid. I know it's more complicated than me just putting my thoughts to it right now. I get that for someone that's sitting out there going, yeah, but Richard, it's more complicated than, I get that. I just believe that as a society, it's something that we need to work really hard at resolving. And sometimes the resolution is just making a small dent so that people see that there is a path to resolution. So kudos again to Representative Will Gazzardi of the 39th District here in Illinois, state rep, and talking about a local issue. And he said it. Illinois wants to lead the way in some of these categories, some of this legislation, and that's kudos to him. I have to keep giving him his flowers. But check him out. And make sure that you are checking out our local people because they are doing the work, I believe, to get things done. And local can be an elected official. Local can also be an organization like Blessings. And we've got a couple other people that are going to be with us in the 7 o'clock hour and the 7:30 hour that are taking on local issues and how they have an impact on our national conversation. So you guys asked for it. Richard, how can I get involved? What can I do? And whether it be joining a walking group like our good friend Karen Byrne from True Blue Politics has put together, or it be something like being an elected official that's taking on a local issue that has national impact, and everything in between, that's how we start to, what's the word I want to use, affect change. That's how we push back on these knuckleheads that just got elected. And that's how we push back on the billionaire class and the uber wealthy class trying to rain down on us the thing that they think is the trickle down of economic benefit. And in fact, it's something else. And you all know what I'm talking about. I can't say those words on the air without some, repercussions. So I don't like repercussions when I can not do something stupid. So anyhow, guys, it's part of where I'm going to be for a while. Because I know that sometimes you feel like, let me back up and put it this way. I know that a lot of people put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into the November election, and those words and that energy doesn't fall. I get it. So, we may not necessarily directly be able to go tap on the White House door and say, "Hey, Donald, and all the rest of you, you're a bunch of blah blah blahs." Part of the reason that I'm talking so much about local and getting involved locally and getting folks to come out of their silo is that I fully understand that what happened in November was heartbreaking for so many people. But let me give you a bit of inspiration about something that I think you guys can draw from. The lady, and I can't call her name right now, so I know somebody's going to help me out. This is a woman who was part of the J6 folks, and she got put in jail for, I think, 60 days. I can't call her name. I can see it, and I had this in my notes, and I forgot what I did with the paper. But anyhow, she got put in jail for 60 days. I think it was 60 days, and was one of the people that said that she didn't want a pardon because she broke the law. She did something wrong. And she just recently spoke about this. And she said, I don't want a pardon because I did something wrong. I broke the law, and I shouldn't get a pardon for that. And neither should other people who did. And so she's kind of been one of the lights that I've been looking at in terms of speaking one's truth and not putting their heads in the sand. She's come out and said that the Trump folk are garbage. And she's had the courage. Did you get her name? What's her name?
Pamela Hemphill?
Yes, Miss Hemphill. She spoke out and said, nah, we broke the law. All of us did. If nothing other than trespassing and all the other things that we did were wrong. I don't want a pardon for that. And that the incoming administration is garbage. And the reason I'm using her as an example is she spoke truth to power. Just like the pastor, the bishop did day before yesterday. So you may not be able to have a platform to speak truth to power like they did, like the bishop did. And I love her interview that she did talking about why she had to do it. But you can speak truth to power even in a local on a local level. And if you don't feel like you have a platform like others may have, you do have one. And sometimes it's something as local as getting involved with an organization that's making sure that children have backpacks with food in them on the weekends. So that's why I keep coming back to we can focus on things that we can touch and do right here in front of us, wherever you are in the country, whether you're in Florida, whether you're in Seattle, whether you're in Chicago, whether you're down in Texas or anywhere in between. This is where and how you can have impact. And we'll keep talking about these issues because I believe that if we keep feeding that and taking our heads out of the sand, then we will have impact on a national level. We will be able to have the platform like Ms. Hemphill did. And man, talk about, I mean, she brought it. If you guys watch the clip, I'll see if we can get that together. Maybe we can get that together for tomorrow. But if not, just, it's powerful. All right, guys, running up on it. Let's take a quick break. 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views, and we'll be right back.
Welcome back to Choose Views with Richard Chu on WCPT 820 AM, where facts matter. Take it away, Richard.
Hey, guys, welcome back to Choose Views, 773-763-9278. So, as always, we're going to have, I've gotten a couple comments that I want to address that came to me on as text this morning. And I was asked by a listener, Henry, to not use ableist language like turning a blind eye or falling on deaf ears. So I want to make sure when someone sends a text or calls, I try my best to address that which is their concern to the extent that I can. So I will do my best to not use what is labeled by some as ableist language. I think, unfortunately, not to excuse it, we oftentimes use words that have become familiar to us. That doesn't excuse it. It's to address. It's kind of going back to something that Representative Gazzardi said. We can have our heads in the sand on certain things, not intentionally. But when it's noted and brought to our attention, then we need to address it and try to do something toward making change. So that's all I can do is say I will do my best to not use language like that because this is language that came from someone who is vision impaired. So I heard I heard the message or the request, so I'll do my best in that space. I'm not going to promise I'll never do it, but I'll do my best not to just willy-nilly use language that's viewed as ableist. So there you go. And that's the fun of doing live radio. You get to clean up on aisle 7 real time as best you can. We have someone with us this morning who is, leaning into making sure that we clean up a lot of stuff on aisle 7 as it relates to legislative measures. We have Chairman Joseph Rutnick with us this morning, who affectionately has the nickname of Zeke. So good morning, Chairman. How are you this morning?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Well, thank you for being with us on the show this morning. I want to kind of give an introduction, but also give you the opportunity to tell people a little bit about who you are, what you're doing, and then we'll talk about some of the things that's happening with the Illinois State Legislature. Chairman Rupnick is the chairman of what? The Prairie Band Potawatomi Nation. Now, that's a mouthful, but listen, guys, that's a deep part of the history of not only the state of Illinois, but the nation in general. And Chairman, I'd love you to take a moment and tell us a little bit more about Prairie Band and Potawatomi Nation here in the state of Illinois.
Well, that whole area there was an area that we inhabited for, some of the old stories say that thousands of years. And because of a series of treaties, two specifically, the one in 1829, the Treaty of Prairie du Chien, and then in 1832, the Treaty of Chicago, where we ceded 5 million acres of land in Illinois to the U.S. government. Ultimately, we were forced to be removed west of the Mississippi, where we finally bought a reservation from the lands that we ceded there in Kansas, a 30 by 30 square mile reservation.
You said a 30 by 30 mile, did you say? Did I catch that right? Wow.
Yes.
So, all right, you've been fortunate, and you really, you may have heard us earlier. We had on State Representative Will Guzzardi from here in Chicago, but some of the bill sponsors that you're partnering with in terms of votes to return stolen land to Prairie Brand Potawatomi Nation include folks like Representative Guzzardi, State Senator Mark Walker, and Senate President Don Harmon. You've got some heavyweights involved in the process to help in making this and getting this legislation taken care of, and then that's got to be good for the work that you're doing.
Oh, absolutely. Enough thanks cannot go out to them. To include, the representative that's just north of us, Representative West, have been a champion for a lot of Native American issues. The thing that when I mentioned those two treaties, the 1829 and 1832 treaty, Congress carved out two sections of land in the DeKalb area for who was my grandfather 4 generations removed, Chief Chobney. Congress could have disestablished that reservation because we signed 18 additional treaties after we signed the 1832 one, but they never did. They kept that land in place. So for 180 years, we've been trying to get the federal government to recognize that that is still a reservation and that is still Indian land. April of last year, the Department of Interior actually put 139 acres in trust, reaffirming the fact that that is a reservation. So now this legislation that was just passed, with the help of Representative Guzzardi, Representative West, Senator Walker, and all those that supported us, that actually helped increase our land base there by another additional 800 acres. So that entire state park, which was a majority of reservation, now once we work through the management agreement, will belong to the Prairie Band Potawatomi Nation.
Got it. So a couple things on when I've said this a lot in the last few weeks, is that local issues, regional issues are also sort of the foundation of national issues and national conversation. And this particular one here, which we could consider a local issue or regional issue, is part of the greater national conversation around reservations and what we would commonly call as Indian lands. I don't want to put any words in your mouth, but what are your thoughts about this now, new administration in that space, in that conversation around native lands?
The only thing that we can hope for is that we continue to move forward and that the U.S. government honor those treaties. One of the things that I always like to point out, everybody likes to hold up the Constitution and say, oh, yeah, we follow the Constitution. Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution states that if a treaty is entered into by the authority of the U.S. Congress, then that shall become supreme law of the land. Now, trying to get folks to remember that and understand that is a challenge. And we, the Potawatomi people, have signed 44 treaties with the U.S. government, all of which have been broken in one form of fashion or another. But still, they are still valid contracts, valid agreements that we as a sovereign nation signed with the U.S. government. So I hope that this administration continues to follow through, and we will do our best to continue to push in that direction.
Well, Illinois has particularly been, a leader, and to use your words, has really shown courage in terms of the land back movement. And I think it definitely speaks well to what the governor has done and other state legislators, as you noted, have done. Talk about what the state legislators and the Governor Pritzker, have done and how important they've been to this land back movement conversation.
Oh, they've been very helpful with that. Governor Pritzker has directed his director of DNR, Director Finney, to start working with the nation when this first passed last May, when it passed the Senate. That was kind of we wasn't really sure we was going to be able to get there, through the House, but eventually it kind of did. So we've been working all year trying to figure out, what it's going to take, what the expenses are, some of the things that the nation is going to have to consider. Once we enter into that management agreement, just to remind folks is that the state will still operate that until the land is fully conveyed over to the nation. And honestly, I don't know how long it's going to take, but we're going to try and work as expeditiously as we can to be able to do that and bring that land under the nation's jurisdiction.
Yeah, and that's where the state government really has such a huge impact on this type of legislation as well as so many others, and it's good that our governor is leading in that space. So a touchy subject, but one that I think that you've got some opinions on and certainly some thoughts about, and that is where our country is when it comes to immigration, asylum seekers. And we so oftentimes you hear people talk about the border as though we only have one border in the United States of America. But give us your observations, and I know it's a broad question, but you're someone that would know a little bit about the conversation of migration and immigration in the United States.
Before this, before we got into this border issue and things like that, we never recognized a border. And it is my feeling or my belief that a lot of those ones that are down in the South still carry a lot of Native American blood. So in my eyes, they're Native American. We have Prairie Band is just one of 13 bands of Potawatomi. 7 are in the lower 48, 6 are in Canada. And at one time, we used to be able to freely cross that border back and forth, trading with the other bands, trading with those folks there. And now, because of Homeland Security and all these other concerns that they have, they really limit us on what we're able to go back and forth, how we maneuver back and forth across it. So I know it's a bad area there, and I think I can understand some of the people's concerns. But again, under those treaties, we are supposed to have unencumbered access across that border, and yet today we're still harassed and stopped every time we try and cross any border.
Do you think that in that conversation that as we go forward, I mean, like I just read some information early this morning that in terms of the involvement of ICE with coming into communities to quote unquote remove people, are you in that conversation? Are you concerned about any of the, for the best words I can come up with, Native American folks being caught up in that grab?
Oh, I'm very concerned about that. Because when we come across, a lot of us look similar to the ones that they're claiming are illegal immigrants, and so I have a lot of tribal members that get harassed whenever they cross either the southern border or the northern border, and my fear is that some of those guys, because they may not have their ID or anything like that, which we shouldn't have to have, are going to get rounded up and deported someplace.
Yeah,
that is a huge fear.
And the question is, in that case, someplace, because we don't know where that person who is, part of a tribe is going to get deported to, because they look like somebody that may, in fact, have an issue with when it comes to immigration. And so, yeah, I wanted to not put words in your mouth and all that, but hear what you had to say in that space. So Chairman, I guess one of the good things that we could say has happened in recent times under the Biden administration is his apology for the Indian boarding schools. See, Americans, in my opinion, have short memories and a lack of really understanding the historical things that have happened, and gloss over it a lot to kind of move forward so that they don't have to deal with the guilt of the ills and the horrors that this continent has put on people. And one of them is Indian boarding schools. President Biden apologized for that, and I think Governor Pritzker was a part of making sure that message got to you. But Prairie Band is urging kind of a furthering of that conversation, correct?
Absolutely. I've experienced boarding schools. My mom, when she was 3 years old, when Department of Education came out, they grabbed her and they said, "Oh, she's old enough." And of course, my grandparents were like, "Oh no, she's not old enough yet." 3 years old, they shipped her to Marty, South Dakota, which was at that time a Catholic boarding school. The only thing that she could speak was Indian, and of course, those nuns were none too nice to those folks that spoke Indian, and so because of that, she never spoke Indian again after she went there. Later on in life, I eventually went to boarding school. I went to and graduated from Intermountain Intertribal Indian School at Brigham City, Utah. But that was kind of a thing where a majority of the folks in my generation or my age actually went to boarding school. And so because of that, we have lost so much due to our language, our culture, our heritage. A majority of our religion is based around our language. And one of the things that I pressed upon Secretary Haaland and Assistant Secretary Newland when they said, while the Healing Coalition is a good first step, what is the end result? And my feeling is that the U.S. government, because they stole that language and that culture away from us, is that no tribe should ever have to pay for language revitalization. That is something that was taken from us, and that should be given back to the tribes through grants and revitalization programs. But, the state of Illinois has been very good with us, and everybody that I've talked to, have been very supportive, for the most part, of us returning there and establishing our homelands again.
Yeah, in the words of all of us, if we lean into that and we don't shy away from it, then we can get something done. And the language is such an integral part of understanding history and passing on stories and passing on the beauty of any particular culture. And the Native American culture in North America is probably at the tip of the spear of a community that has had its language removed, and to revitalize that and to bring it back, I think is good for the country's ability to heal. And if without that, we will just continue to wash, rinse, and repeat. So, but I do have to say, Chairman, kudos to you. The work that you're doing and the people's lives that you are impacting, it means a lot. And I'm glad that the legislature is siding with you to help get some of these things done and help bring recognition to an area that people want to bury their heads on. They just do. And I'm happy that you are leading this charge. I really am.
Well, thank you very much for that. And, again, thanks to all the representatives, the state that has been very supportive of us. And we look forward to returning to our homelands and continuing this relationship as we move forward.
Absolutely. Just as a note of connecting people to what you do, how can folks that listen to our show anywhere in the country find you and be able to provide whatever support that they can to your efforts?
We have our own website, prairiebandnation.org, and they can go on the website and look at that. That gives our history, kind of lets folks know where we're at, some of the initiatives that we're trying to push, again, any one of those areas there, they can go out and visit the village and visit the reservation and talk with those folks. And everyone knows how to get a hold of me, and I'm up there quite often and more than happy to talk with anybody.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Chairman Joseph Zeke Rupnick has been with us this morning of the Prairie Band Potawatomi Nation. And before I wrap up, I have to ask you this question. How did the name Zeke become that sort of quoted nickname? Where did that come from?
When I was born, my dad is named Joseph Rupnick, and my grandfather looked at me and he said, "Oh, there's already too many Joseph Rupnicks. We're going to call him Zeke."
And it stuck, it seems.
Yeah, oh yeah, everybody knows me as Zeke.
There you go. Well, Chairman Zeke, thank you for being with us this morning. We really appreciate you taking some time out to share what you're working on, and we'll do our part to keep people aware of what you're doing, and at some point in the future have you back on the show. Does that sound okay?
You bet. Sounds good.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chairman. Have a great day today.
You too.
Bye now.
Bye.
Local issue, national conversation. It definitely is, because anywhere we go on this continent, there were folks here before us. And I don't want to get too deep into that right now, but you know where I'm coming from. So kudos to Chairman Zeke Rupnick for being with us this morning and talking about the importance of a couple of things. One, making sure that land return, stolen land return is a part of our conversation. And frankly, the other part, which Governor Pritzker is leaning into and many of our state representatives are, and that is reestablishing language that supports the bills that support language revitalization. Y'all know what I'm talking about. We can bury our heads in the sand all we want to about this, but that's not going to fix problems that we have as part of our community, our micro community and our macro community. So, I want you guys to not, again, as part of succeeding as we go forward, we have to be willing to talk about these issues. And, I know that people there's some folks out there that are excited. They're saying that already that ICE has fixed the problem at the border and that ICE is rounding up criminals and rounding up, people at the border. Well, okay, I want to see if ICE is going to round up people that are not just folks that have come from or part of the southern border migration. Let's be honest. There are people who don't look like externally or wear the costume of the folks that are coming across the proverbial southern border that are part of the problem. America just doesn't want to talk about those folks. They want to make this a brown people's issue. They want to make the problem be that all of the criminals that are here, that have come across the border, are brown-skinned folks only. And we know that's a damn lie. We know that. The statistical data backs it up, the community. We understand that there are people who are here not only illegally, but that have done things that are illegal. But they don't just look like the brown-skinned folks that are coming across the southern border. And for anybody in America to sit back and thump their chest about we're fixing the southern border problem of brown-skinned people, you need to check yourself, because the southern border issue is not our only border issue, and it's certainly not our only immigration issue. Look at the data. Stop just trying to blame. And if you want to say and feel good about them, catching some of the quote unquote Mexican illegals that are across the border or that are here, I would gather to say, and I can say this safely because I know the data backs it up. It's not anecdotal. That you could go to communities that are minor in the number of brown-skinned minorities. And if you dug deeply enough, you would find that there are people in those communities that don't really have a significant population of brown-skinned minorities. And you'd find there's some illegals there that come from some of those wonderful, as Trump once said, those wonderful white European countries. You'll find it. The question is, does America have the strength and temerity and the guts to look at it? And most of the time, in my experience, the United States of America's citizenry, and many of which are those 78 million people that voted for this 34-time convicted felon, don't have the guts to do that, or the willingness to do that. That's not anecdotal. Just look at the data. All right, guys. It's great to have Chairman Zeke with us this morning. And I'm pulling for the efforts, and I'm glad to see that other folks in the state of Illinois, the state legislature, are doing the work to help make sure that these efforts are completed. Really, really cool to see. So shout out to him, and shout out to Representative Will Guzzardi, who was with us prior to that segment. We're going to take a quick break. The number is 773-763-9278. When we come back, we'll be talking with another local hero. This is Choose Views. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Choose Views with Richard Chu on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey, guys, welcome back to Choose Views, 773-763-9278. Thanks for being with us this morning. When I talk about local issues and I talk about things that we have in common, I always come back to the fact that a local issue is a regional issue, is a national issue, is a global issue. And we have the opportunity to affect change. This morning, we have with us another local champion. And, in Chicago, local can be the northern suburbs, the western suburbs, the southwestern suburbs. It can even include northwestern Indiana. And this morning, we have with us the director of community health education at Edgewater Health over in Gary, Indiana, Tanya Woodson. Good morning, Ms. Woodson, and welcome to Choose Views.
Good morning, Mr. Chu, and thank you for having me on your radio interview this morning.
You're welcome. My pleasure. I got to give a quick shout out to you guys. You got this great thing that's coming up, this art competition, and I know you're going to talk about that a little bit, which is kind of exciting. But look, I just have to tell you this. You guys are checking all the boxes in terms of getting things done with your
thank you.
with your organization. I mean, oh my goodness. I mean, wow. Talk to us a little bit, Ms. Woodson, about Edgewater Health and your time there, and what are some of the things that people just don't even know about Edgewater and the work that you're doing there in Gary, Indiana.
Yes, sir. Edgewater Health is a primary care behavioral health organization that has been in the community for 50 years. Last year, we celebrated 50 years of serving individuals and their families. And when Edgewater first was birthed, it was known for behavioral health and mental health services that provided services for mentally ill patients and clients. But now, as of 2014, we have extended our services to primary care services that offer adult services, children, youth, and children's services, day treatment programs for children and their families, community residential support services, addiction services, and crisis stabilization services.
That's a brainful, but no pun intended. So many people are impacted by the lack of care. And I'm not going to just say medical care in terms of treatment of an incident, a broken arm, a slip and fall, whatever they might be that's injury related. And, we had on earlier on the show, and this is why I want to talk about it this way. We had on earlier Representative Will Guzzardi, who's here in Illinois, and he's working on a bill which is to help decriminalize sex workers. And we talked about this in the space of stigmas. And oftentimes, and I'm not the expert here, I'm just a guy that's lived a life and has tried to pay attention. Oftentimes, the stigma that comes with you can get injured and hurt yourself physically, and everybody runs to you to kind of make sure you're okay, right? But when somebody has a mental health issue, that can be hidden for years.
Yes,
and so talk about what the importance of addressing mental health is on a micro level, but then on a macro level as it relates to things that you observe and that you work on.
It's very important because, as you indicated, we all go through some level of mental health, and it just really came into the forefront, specifically after we experienced what we experienced in 2020, and that's when a lot of people started to come out to say they were dealing with some level of mental health issue, and this is what Edgewater Health had to confront in our community, especially specifically when it's dealing with our Black and brown people, because there is a stigma associated with mental health and mental illness. Primarily, the reason why we expanded to primary care services, because normally when a person come in from primary care services, they may or may not have symptoms pertaining to mental health. But when you're dealing with behavioral health, many times you will have some components of needing to address some form of chronic care prevention. So the two together, that's what makes Edgewater Health the organization that it is, because we take care of the entire person, both primary, our physical, and behavioral.
And you're doing something that's really kind of cool to help folks be more engaged in that space. And talk a little bit about this art competition.
So one of the things that we want to do is we want to educate our youth, our young people. We need to normalize the conversation when it comes to mental health and wellness. And one of the great things that we're doing, we're having an art competition. And the theme is speak up, reach out, shatter the silence. We're currently having registration. Basically, it is open to Lake County students, high school students only, from the 9th through the 12th grade in the Lake County areas. But we're currently accepting registration forms, and we are accepting them until January 31st, until the end of the month.
So is it? So it's specific to those in Lake County, but can folks outside of the area, so from folks from the Chicago area, be able to support it? How can folks that might be, in the region be able to support the effort?
You will be able to support it, and you can support it through our gala, our upcoming gala. So Edgewater is having a gala. We're hosting a gala in June. It's June 7th, and it's going to be held at the Hard Rock Casino. And with this art competition, the students that win, or we have a first, second, and third place winners, and the winners will be able to have their art pieces featured at the gala, which will be in June.
Okay. So I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
So the art gala is the Art of Healing, again, which is scheduled June 7th at Hard Rock Casino. You will be getting more information pertaining to the gala, but yes, everyone, you can support, students by coming to the gala, by, we're going to reveal who's the first, second, and third place winners there. And again, this art competition, Speak Up, Reach Out, Shatter the Silence, is giving you a channel. It's giving them an opportunity to start the conversation about mental health with their families. And it's art form, it's fun.
Yeah.
Acceptable mediums of requirements. It's not just for paint brushes or art paint. There's other acceptable mediums and requirements like oil, watercolor, spray, finger painting, pencil, artwork, collage, artifacts. You name it. Anything we will accept with the exception of AI designs. Anything else we will accept. And again, we're currently taking registration forms up until the end of the month, and the actual art piece will not be due until March 31st.
Got it. So they'll have basically 2 months to put things together and get them submitted. So that's
absolutely correct.
So I'll fast forward, then I'll come back. We will definitely want to have you back on as we get closer to the deadline and the submission time. Maybe in early April, we'll talk again. And then as we get closer to the gala, we'll definitely have to talk again about that, because I want to do whatever I can and through the show lean into to the gala being a success. Ms. Woodson, talk a little bit about you and your background. I mean, my mother and father both, and my mother-in-law, we were blessed with being able to have them have care during their later years. And the thing that I have to say is, the applause goes out to those of you who are in this business of caring for people of all ages and backgrounds. But talk a little bit about the work, how you got to where you are and leading this charge in the way in which you do.
Okay, well, I am the Director of Community Health Education at Edgewater, and my role is specifically to educate the community about mental health, self-care, and the prevention of chronic diseases. We host health fairs. We partner with other agencies in the community. For instance, we partnered with the Food Bank of Northwest Indiana to where we have a grocery locker on our premises that takes care of the homeless and addresses food insecurity. We also have a program, Mind, Body, and Spirit, because many times we often think about taking care of the body as far as going to the doctor, getting a prescription, we're into just seeing taking care of the body in one component. But truly, when Edgewater say that we take care of the whole person, we also take care of the whole person holistically. and provide education to take care of the person's mind, body, and spirit. So we offer presentations that speaks to that. We speak to nutrition. We speak to healthier relationships. We speak to suggesting that everyone have a spiritual foundation that they can speak to and thrive from. So we offer these various programs so that people can become educated as far as taking care of themselves, their mental wellness, their physical, and also to empower them to take care of themselves as far as self-care. I
really like the First Lady's initiative that you have championed, and just making sure that that this is, because what you do, and I've been saying this a lot recently, and we'll be talking about this more and more. What you guys do in little old northwestern Indiana, Gary, Indiana, is part of a national conversation, and it's a concern that we as a country have to lean into and continually lean into. Speak to that in a moment, for a moment, about this. Although what you're doing is right there in Gary, Indiana, but it's also part of a national conversation that we have to have.
So with the First Lady's initiative, we know that going into our churches is very important. We first try to work with the pastors, but we know that they have a lot on their plate. So we say, hey, let's work with the First Ladies and the advocates of the community, because we know the First Ladies, the pastors' wives, or the women who serve on the various committees of the church, they're the nurturers of the church. Okay, so we say, hey, let's get with them to see what we can provide for our faith-based community. And that's what we've been working with, the First Ladies of the community, be it in the church, be it in the community, be it political. We know that women, when we get together, we have a synergy that can, change the prospect of a community. So that's what we're doing. We're working with the women to see how we can go into the churches and we can educate our members about mental health. I want to share a story, what happened with me not too long ago when I visited a church, and the pastor took a moment to say a prayer, and he offered members to come to the pulpit if they were sick, or if they were dealing with some type of ailment, or if they were about to have surgery. And a few people came up for prayer. But then he asked for members to come up that was dealing with mental health issues, that was dealing with trauma, that was dealing with heartbrokenness and guilt. Over half the church came up. And I was surprised. I'm got to tell you, I was surprised that many of the members or individuals that came up was children and teenagers.
Wow.
So this is huge. This is huge. So what we're doing at Edgewater, we're basically boots on the ground trying to raise awareness about mental health and taking the sting out of the stigma to say it's okay. It's okay to address those issues, because everyone gets stressed or depressed at some point in time, but when it's extended, and we never really think about all those other components that people are going through, even when it comes to a loss of a job, a loss of a relationship, not to mention, grief.
Right.
So it's a lot.
It is. Well, integrity, mutual respect, professionalism, accountability, and community. These are the values that guide the folks that are at Edgewater Health in little old Gary, Indiana, to keep on doing the work for people that are in the immediate community, of course, the greater region, and a part of the national conversation. And we've been so fortunate. We've been so fortunate this morning to have LaTanya Woodson, who is a director of community health education at Edgewater Health in northwestern Indiana. Ms. Woodson, thank you for being with us. And I meant it when I said that when we get closer to the end of the submission time in late March, early April, we want to have you back and kind of find out how things went. And then as we get closer to the gala that's taking place in the early summer, I'd love to have you back again to talk about how that's moving along as our way of contributing and being supportive of your efforts. Will you come back?
Yes, I will come back. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, listen, thanks for being with us this morning. We really appreciate you being on the show and more so the work that you're doing to support the community. So thank you, Ms. Woodson.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Talk to you soon.
You too. All right.
Bye-bye. Wow. How about that, guys? A lineup of people who are putting the work in to make sure that folks are getting taken care of. Reach out to Ms. Woodson. LaTanya Woodson is her name. She's the director of community health education at Edgewater Health in Northwest Indiana, specifically in Gary, Indiana. Part of our region, part of our local community, if you will, our broader local community here in Chicago, Illinois, the state of Illinois, Northwestern Indiana, and the Midwest. So, it's those folks, guys, and it goes without saying. It's those folks that they have an impact on a local level. That local expands to a regional and even bigger. And as having the conversation with Chairman Zeke, as he talked about what's happening in that local community and local conversations, important, and most certainly with Representative Will Guzzardi. And these are issues that we can't put our heads in. We can't put our heads in the sand on these things. I've said it before. I'll say it again. And what's happening on a national level with what's going on in Washington, these are all things that in some capacity are impacted by what happens with national legislation. Pulling dollars from funding for mental health is a stupid idea. Yeah, I said it. It's a stupid idea. It doesn't. And where do those dollars go? Because listen, I'll tell you this, and this is what Representative Guzzardi touched on. We didn't go too deep in this space, but this is what he was saying. We pretend like we don't know somebody that's in the area of sex work. We pretend like, oh no, that's them. Like he said, the others. But Henry, we all know that we're 1 or 2 degrees separation from someone, and that's not to put further a stigma on it, but we do kind of run and hide from that. And I just caught myself from about to say we do turn a blind eye. So I'm going to stay with my word to try to change my language in that regard. But seriously, like Representative Guzzardi said, we do we're 1 or 2 degrees of separation from someone that's impacted in that world or is in that world. We're 1 or 2 degrees of separation from what Chairman Zeke talked about. We know somebody whose land, and let's be honest, we could talk about it in the Native American part of our community, but we can also talk about that in a broader sense when it comes to people who have had, property misappropriated of other communities. And we most definitely are 1 or 2 degrees of separation from somebody to what Ms. Woodson talked about. And I kind of led with this, leading the conversation, saying we all run to the helm when someone gets injured, break an arm, break a leg, whatever the thing may be. However, when someone's going through some mental stuff, we assign a stigma to that. What's wrong with you? How come you don't have your stuff together? And as a result, we end up not talking about it, and there goes that makes the problem worse. And I'm going to tell you guys something. You may think I'm crazy for saying this, but the country is in a mental bit of trauma right now. And part of the reason I wanted to be able to talk to this and talk to people who are in this space is that the country cannot keep its head in the sand, because we do have some issues right now that are social, political, economic issues. And, the Democratic Party has the opportunity of a lifetime to snatch back the covers and talk about the fact that the country is in pain and is going to be in further pain. The Democratic Party has the opportunity to lead in that space when it comes to the solutions. And I believe that some of those solutions are taking care of some of the local issues and standing in the void to make sure that funding that would come from a federal level that funding doesn't get removed to help people and to help organizations like Ms. Woodson is running. And I know that there's people out there saying, yeah, we need to stop putting money into some of our federal organizations and let the states handle it. Listen, y'all, we are the United States of America, united together, not ununited, seceding states of America. The first states that are going to be impacted by yanking money from FEMA are coastal states. Three of which, I don't want to. Florida, Texas, Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi. Help me out, y'all. The Carolinas. Did we take those are 7, 8 states right there in the Southeast that voted red? Yank the money from FEMA. Watch what happens. Go ahead, red states. Yank the money from FEMA. Shut their budget down and see what happens the next time we have a disaster akin to the one that we had back in the fall. Take all that money from FEMA. Just say, no, we don't. That's putting one's head in the sands and saying we don't have a problem. Then that's just not good business for the country. It isn't at all. It's stupid. It's not even a bad idea. It's just a stupid idea. Okay? And so when I merge the conversation together around putting our heads in the sand on a local issue when it comes to mental health, that Ms. Woodson is at the tip of the spear and helping to resolve, or what Representative Guzzardi talked about, or what Chairman Zeke talked about. These are all part of a national conversation. And again, the Democratic Party has an opportunity of a lifetime right now, and not just the leaders that have been elected, but the regular, everyday, which we all are, regular, everyday folks, to impact that by looking at local issues and say, if we got children with mental issues here in this area, chances are that's probably an issue that's a bigger issue that's national. And now cite this going back to what Dan Summons from Blessings in a Backpack said yesterday about there is not a zip code in the country that doesn't have a food shortage issue, particularly when we talk about children. So it would make sense then, I would think, call me out, correct me if I'm wrong, or if you think I'm wrong, that those are issues that are part of our national conversation. So Democratic Party, please, y'all, tap into this space right now. Democratic Party as it relates to elected officials, and Democratic Party as it relates to everyday, regular folks. This is where you can have an impact. And I promise you I'm going to continue to do my best to talk about this, because the national opportunities that we have will start with us retaking back some space and some, no disrespect to Chairman Zeke, but taking back some territory that we ceded from a political standpoint, taking back a conversation and doing what Senator Murphy said in this clip, that we need to start to make sure that we're building our own infrastructure when it comes to the messaging around the things that are important to us. So, guys, listen, I appreciate you being with us today, and I hope that you got some substance from our three guests, Representative Will Guzzardi from here in Illinois, Chairman Zeke Rupnick, as well as LaTanya Woodson with the Edgewater Center. It's Choose Yours, guys. What do I say? Take a deep breath and make your life count. We will see you tomorrow.